Nice picture. Oh.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we are talking about the moment we sign a deal until the value we are going to deliver. So, from the moment it's signed until the implementation. We will wait for 1 more minute before we kick this webinar off. To still let some people join. I see already Lisanne and Hans joined the webinar, so welcome.
Nice to have you both on here. Nice to see Lisanne as well, all the way from Norway. Thanks for joining.
So I see we are 2 minutes in. We also did the Dutch webinar today, and we also saw that a lot of people are joining in later. But for the people who are on time, we are going to kick it off. So first, to do some introductions. My name is Stan van der Brink. I'm a partner account executive at Workspace 365, and I think I work here for more than 4 years now. Some practical information. The webinar will be recorded and will be shared afterwards. Also, please ask all your questions in the chat or just give a shout with your microphone. That's also fine for us. And next to me is?
Yeah, I'm Nathan. So I'm a partner account executive based in Manchester in the UK. So Lisanne, we've met before, Hans. We haven't, but yeah, for everyone that is tuning in after this, yeah, I'm the PA for all global accounts. So if you do have any questions on this, yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to have a chat and answer some questions.
So we already did a lot of webinars. A few of them were Search Simplified, the conversation about Workspace 365 in comparison to SharePoint as a solution, Communication Simplified, where we also talked about the communities that were launched. And next webinar is going to be about AI Simplified. So that will be the whole story about our first release with AI in the workspace itself. So I think that's very exciting as well. Also, if you miss a session, you can watch it back at the partner portal, especially for interesting releases, or if you, for example, see a lot of comparisons within your own market between Workspace versus SharePoint, you can always watch it back. So the agenda for today is first the sales process. How are we going to define value before we even sign? Because that's a very important step of the process before we even sign a deal. Afterwards, we will talk about best practices, tips, but also pitfalls we saw during sales processes, during implementations, just so you don't have to make the same mistakes again. And last but not least, how we, with the customer program, help you partners to actually implement and deliver the best value at our customers. So this really sounds like a basic, but we should always start within the sales process with what problem are we going to solve? And the thing is that we are, I hope, very enthusiastic about our own solution. So if a potential customer or client responds a bit of positive to our solution, I think it's in, let's say, at least in my DNA, to be really enthusiastic and like tell a lot about the solution. And a lot of times that will destroy the fact that we are forgetting the problem which we started at first. And I think it's very nice if a client really responds positive, like it's very natural to like continue with that conversation, but it's very strong if you get back into, as I said, this very basic thing, which is what problems are we going to solve? Because if we don't have that clear, for us it's a churn risk in the future. Because we see that even though maybe your contact person at your client is very enthusiastic at today or the first year, maybe that person leaves, and if you don't really have concrete what we solve, we are going to have a churn risk in the future. So we always say, and especially like also with the first version of Workspace, what is it going to like solve for your customer? Because this is where it starts, you know? It really starts with getting into the perspective of the end user and knowing what we are solving for them. And a lot of times, customers don't really know their own end users as well, especially some IT managers. We see that they don't know their own problems of their end users. So I think it's also to us to challenge our customers or potential customers to step into the perspective of the end user.
Yeah. I'd also, because we've got a few people in here from different markets, quite varying markets. Obviously, the San in Norway and Hans in the Netherlands, and obviously myself in the UK. Do you recognise any of these challenges in particular, or any of these, really prevalent in your markets with your customers? If you're not comfortable speaking out loud, you can also just drop a message in the chat.
Or if it isn't in the slide, it's even more interesting. Please,
yeah,
please share.
Of course, if we've missed anything. But I think for us in the UK, what we really see is our market's a lot less mature, and companies are really now starting to invest in digital transformation. So we see this really fragmented IT environment where end users still need to log into their legacy systems via, remote desktop, virtual desktop, but then they also need to log into their cloud. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we're really trying to help for our customers at the moment.
What we also saw a few years ago in the Netherlands, but also now with AI, which is interesting because it's the next topic, is that organizations really want to drive forward with their organization, even though they're in the back end, there's still some legacy left.
Yeah. No, exactly. Maybe trying to move too fast without having sort of solid base, I guess, can be a real challenge. Well, especially for end users, and I think that's where we go into the sort of low adoption of applications. If you're constantly throwing new tools at users, they're not going to be picking them up. So, being able to centralize that into their sort of starting place where they start their day, you really see that easier adoption, raised adoption. So, yeah.
Indeed.
But
yeah, so please, Hans, but also Lisanne, share and it could be a very small example of how you solve a problematic customer. In the meantime, we are going to continue. So I think it's also very important that if we are going to sign a customer, so this is before the signing moment, we should be able, as a salesperson or as a partner, to describe what we're going to solve, this concrete, as in this example. So for us, it's always on the 3 pillars or the 3 modules. So it's about giving access to everything that's there in the organization, to every application, to every data set, to every document management system, to make sure everything is in one place. That also within their internal communication, we can really solve some problems on how people nowadays still use mail for sharing news or whatever ways of communicating there is currently, to really streamline it within the few possibilities we have in Workspace 365. And last but not least, but if that's for the more mature companies as well, how can we what we did as IT, automate processes? So how can we work even more efficient than we currently are doing? And I think what we see with a lot of implementations is if you don't do this in the sales process, or if you don't document it, because I think a lot of people are lazy on administration, you see that you have to do it over with the implementation. So if you start an implementation, you again have to ask, what are we going to solve? How should we implement, how should we personalize your Workspace 365 so it suits. So it's also the double the amount of work for our customer success makers if the salespeople don't do this. So therefore, I think it's very important. You can't deny this this part of the process. And then it's like within all the transformations, why should you always start with Workspace 365 from day one? So what we see is that the end users are mainly confronted with their front end. So for example, if you switch applications, if there's something happening at the front end, like what the end user sees, that has the most impact on, like, let's say, the adoption rate. So therefore, we want to have one interface where the only switch for them is first Workspace 365, but all the other changes we are going to make are within our interface. So you see that if you look at the maximum amount of changes a end user can handle, it's a lot more that you can put within all the projects in a year if you use an interface to cover all the changes. Besides that, if you are making changes and you look at like all the studies and like they are done about change management, it's very, very important that we communicate clearly about the changes we are making. And therefore also Workspace 365 within communicating to the end users is a very important part of making changes within an organization. So you see that Workspace 365, it really doesn't matter like in which phase you are now. We should always try it also in the perspective of the end user to start with Workspace 365. And from that point, like make some steps in maybe outsourcing your Citrix, or maybe making some more implementations, some more steps on how we communicate. So stop mailing and start using Workspace 365 for more intranet functionalities. And at the end also, if you look at how we can integrate more processes, I'll do it within the one interface. So a bit of a little part what we're going to talk about next, but also within AI, you want to have all things you want to search for within your AI tools in one interface, because we also see, and that's what Eric is going to tell about more, that there are a lot of endpoint solutions with AI. And also within that, we don't want to think in endpoint solutions. We want to think in one interface for the end user. So to talk you through one of our customer experiences, we saw with Activate. So most of the times we see either you roll out Workspace per team or for each location, and we do first one part and then another part. But at Activate we did a sort of big bang, because there was a big transition coming. We saw that they had a really old-fashioned intranet based on SharePoint. So they wanted to improve their communication. So they wanted to stop with SharePoint. Also, they were switching applications to really main business applications for them. So a HR application, AFAS, but also this is a healthcare company. Their ECD was also changed to ONS NADAP. And I think if you do this all together, it's really a big change. Like end user has the feeling they work at a different company, because it's like they are really their main business applications, you know, where they work in all day. So what we did with Activate is we started Workspace 365 within that whole big transition. And also during that transition, we really used the announcements and pop-ups of Workspace 365 to announce the fact that we are starting Workspace 365, what is new in Workspace 365, but also what is new in your HR application, AFAS, or what is new in your ECD within your ONS NADAP. And that communication during that transition about Workspace itself, but also the other new things, really improved the adoption of the company. And that's what we really got back from Activate. that it really adopted a new way of working way faster than they were used to when they, for example, switched an application. So if we talk about starting with Workspace, especially because we say you should like always start with Workspace 365, we always say start with the basis. So the fact that everything is accessible within your Workspace 365. And that can, in an example, start as simple as having all your shortcuts in one place. So despite the source of the application, could be still in a VDI server, could be locally installed, could be already a SaaS version of an application. It doesn't really matter. In this case, Thomas has all his applications in one place. This could be the first version.
Yeah, I think another nice like tip with this, we spoke with a construction company from Norway, and they said that they really pushed for sort of removing their sort of start menu and just having users come straight to Workspace 365. So being able to set this as the default landing page on your browser. So as a user opens up Workspace 365, this is the first thing that they see. And this really helps them get into the rhythm of, coming to a new application, changing their way of working, and it helps them get used to it way quicker as well. So I think that's a nice sort of first step in pushing this to users.
Indeed. And the good thing is, like, for example, if we talk about UForce, if UForce is now still like enabled via Citrix, the same tile, the same place of the tile will be at the Workspace 365 of Thomas, even though maybe we are going to have a SaaS version in a year or 2 years.
And I think what that helps with when we speak with IT teams, especially, is you then don't get them IT tickets going, right, why is this application no longer working? Why can't I get onto this? Or where do I need to go now? Being able to just replace the tile and have them just go to a completely different location, but for them they're going to the exact same spot. It's just so much easier. It's such a nicer user experience, and it saves IT a lot of headaches and having to explain that.
Indeed. Second thing we are going to add to this Workspace 365 for us is like communication. So sometimes we even see WhatsApp, which I think is very informal, used in very formal settings. We see Teams, we see Outlook with like sort of online newspapers. We see a lot of ways of communicating. And because a lot of ways they are now using are not working. So for example, they see that Teams is not working, Outlook newspaper is not working. Sometimes we hear that because therefore we are going to start on WhatsApp, for example. It's getting like there are more and more and more channels added to like the way of communicating. And then we are trying first with the announcements to streamline it into only Workspace 365. And I think the biggest advantage is that, for example, if we talk about mobile users, that's why I also talked about WhatsApp as a example, is also available in the App Store and has some notifications. So you can also have push notifications. Therefore, it's not like if you use Outlook or you use other platforms that it doesn't come to mind. But we really can streamline all communications for all types of people, for all types of devices. And it's very important that like during those implementations, we ask for feedback. So if you start an implementation, it should be really, really accessible to share your feedback as an end user. Because if you don't hear anything, it doesn't always mean that sort of there are no questions or there's no feedback to improve the Workspace 365. So therefore, one of our best practices is that we have a group of 2-3 tiles to deliver feedback at the Workspace 365 environment, or even like launch a community where people can chat, help, or send feedback about how Workspace is now implemented. And Then next to that, like a lot of common mistakes we see is that we have like a really big launch before we even start. So that's why we say keep it simple, keep it small. Who is responsible for what? Because a lot of times customers are also not known about the responsibility they have within their own project. And a Workspace 365 implementation suits the best if it's a bit personalized. So if it's personalized at the organization. So therefore, also a bit of the responsibility lays at the customer. And so I think it's a cooperation. But if the customer is not aware of the fact that he has also a part in this project, we see that sometimes it takes more time, which can be frustrating in also the expectations. So our advice is like, keep it manageable, keep it small, and the project should be in a scope of 3 months to have the first version live, and therefore we can also like in the next months build up even more features. But if we talk about signing until value, you want to have the first value delivered in 3 months. And it doesn't matter that like all the features are already within their workspace. You should have the first value added within 3 months to also keep the enthusiasm going.
Yeah, I think another sort of alluding to the previous slide as well in terms of being able to push for feedback. I think a pretty underutilized feature within the hub is being able to embed forms into an announcement and allowing the user to submit answers within a form directly from an announcement. So, you know, if you do roll out Workspace 365 to a test pilot group and you need that feedback, being able to just post an announcement that pops up to the user, they just quickly have to type a few words and then they can get on with their day. So it's really, really easy to collect that feedback, especially in those first few phases. So that's just another little tip that we see.
Yeah, and it's another way of like collecting feedback.
Yeah.
Also, to prevent that the project is in only 3 months for the first version, is that we see that integrations, especially, but also the roles and rights within your Microsoft tenants is the biggest point within Go Live. So if your Microsoft tenant for some groups is like, if you have multiple tenants, totally like isn't in the right spot already, look at which tenant maybe is already really defined. So in the terms of groups, roles, and everything. So people don't get to see information they aren't allowed to within their Workspace 365. Because I think this is the biggest, let's say, homework before you can start with Workspace. Because if this is right, you should be able to go live in like 1 day. So it's plug and play. But you should be aware of this fact and maybe start with the group that is the most accessible to start with. And that's always why we say start with a test group. So first we talked about like collecting feedback to also sharpen and even improve first version of Workspace 365. But you will also find some key users. So we have a lot of companies who are only specialized in adoption, or you have floor walkers, all those kinds of tools, which I think are amazing. But I think really the most also cheap way and most efficient way to improve your adoption within the organization is to have some key users. Because if we talk about preventing support tickets, we do a lot of that in our product to make it like really easy and accessible, and like that it's very, very logic implemented. But having those key users will also prevent a lot of support tickets from happening. And therefore, I think we should ask the questions like, what does an end user in this group need? What do you do for work on a weekly basis? What processes or applications do you use on a monthly or even yearly basis? And what's your current struggle? And we talked about Activate, the last user case, which they did the implementation with a big bang. But we also have a user case, and we see more and more that we really, in different phases, roll out Workspace 365. This could be for each location, for each team, depending on how the groups in the organizations are defined. At this point, we also had at Waterschap Rivierenland a really hard but easy on the ICT infrastructure group. So we had a group of mobile users who used 3 already SaaS applications. But if you talk about communication, they were the hardest group to find. So therefore also their feedback was like really important, because they were very critical. They were only like mobile users, didn't care that much on their digital workspace, only used 3 applications. But that made that we, like, in a very, very short period of time could level up a Workspace 365 for that group, because their applications were so accessible, and like already validate if Workspace 365 could help with improving their communication within the organization. And therefore we also could collect the feedback already before we rolled out to the whole organization, which really helped. So Hans and Lisanne, I'm very curious, like, if you roll out Workspace 365, do you prefer to like use a big bang? So from the 1st of November, we are going to start with Workspace 365 and you don't use your old way of working again? Or to like do it in phases, to do it for each location or like a small group of people?
I have a lot of small customers who are using Workspace 365, and there we have started with just a few people, and yeah, got some feedback on how we could improve, and started with just the basic, a simple Workspace 365 access, shortcuts to websites, and build it from there.
Yeah, very good.
Brilliant. Yeah.
That has been a good way to do it, I think.
Definitely. No, sounds good. I think another nice sort of thing to do with this as well is just having a few stakeholders from different departments when sort of planning the build of the workspace. I think that way you get more of a holistic view of the business challenges and pains. Obviously, a lot of that's done in the sales cycle, but also by including, someone from finance, someone from HR, so they can all take a look at it and say, this is what the workspace needs to look like for our team. So I think that's also a nice way to make sure you're getting value across the whole business, as well as this sort of team testing way. So, but no, it's nice to hear that you've also got a nice sort of phased way of rolling this out, like Stan shared as well. So
yeah.
Have you used, Lisanne, one of like either the communities using a form or like a tile to collect feedback during the project?
No, the feedback is new to me. I have not used or seen that before.
Oh, and maybe it's a nice try. So at the end, the goal is to collect the feedback, and you can like ask them personally. But I think it's a nice thing to also make it accessible in the Workspace 365.
Yeah, that's looked cool.
and Hans also says not a big bang. So
No, indeed. I think
actually,
this is also for us the preferred way. But for example, if we have a big transition coming, it could be also the best way. So I think it's depending on the customer.
Yeah.
And Nathan, you already talked about including multiple stakeholders. So for us, Workspace 365 isn't a project. It's a digital workplace we continuously wanting to improve. So the best thing, and it can be based on the feedback we just collected from the first few months, or predefined, we want to have a lot of next steps after our go live. And if we started with, like, for example, only the TAL applications portal, we can think about communication as a next step. But if you have already included that, we see that, for example, indeed, Nathan, HR is like a very important stakeholder to include, to think about, okay, so if we have one digital workplace where everyone is working from, a lot of processes are defined by HR, or let's say lease policies, or everything that's like relevant to like an end user. It's very interesting, like how can we manage that within our digital workplace? And one big tip for us is like to organize shadow sessions on how is an end user working, how is he currently using his Workspace 365, and like where can we improve the amount of clicks that an end user takes to get to his information. And so therefore we can see maybe what integrations would really help their end users to improve and work more efficient. And we talked about getting into the skin of a end user in the sales process, but this like never ends. So even they are using Workspace for now 2 years, it's really helpful to organize a shadow session with a few key users to look on like how can we improve the Workspace 365. Also, we see that it most of the time starts with like internal focus Workspace 365, but we see a lot of best practices already on external stakeholders. So for example, in education, we see parents on a Workspace 365 because they want to be informed about what's happening at their school, what's happening with their kids, what is going on. In healthcare, we see also patients now using Workspace 365 to get updates about like what is happening and what is the whole process. Or a lot of volunteers. I think that is maybe the most used practice. Like how can volunteers without a Microsoft license still, because they are part of the company, get informed, feel connected to our organization. And if you already include this in the first version of Workspace, we see a lot of times that the scope is getting too big, but it's one of the nice next steps to continuously improve Workspace 365. And therefore, if we look at like the perfect project team for the digital workplace, we see that HR plays a role. Internal communication should be part of the team. Of course, IT and management, a lot of times where it starts. And last but not least, before we are signing a deal, we should be able to like tell the perspective of the end user. And as I said, like within your project team, the end user should also be part of it. To always validate, like we are trying to solve the end user's problems, but is it actually helping the end user? And that's like how we supporting our partners with this whole process. So from implementation to like after 2 years, maybe use a shadow IT session to improve their environment. It's with our customer program. So we try to like continuously drive adoption of new functionalities and modern ways of working within our customer program. And therefore we see a rhythm. So collecting feedback, we are really focused on during the implementation, but it's also very important while they're using it. So we're seeing our clients at least 4 times a year within a big group and a longer session. But you can imagine that maybe some of the most useful little things are implemented in like a short call and a little addition to maybe switch a button to the left, or delete something, or make some little changes and make them aware of the fact that you can use forms within your announcements. Those little things most of the times are the most important, which we forget in the big projects. And what does the customer program add for you as a partner? So first of all, we see that on the retention of clients, we have way longer relationship because we are like in contact first. So you have a rhythm of seeing each other and problems are being prevented. at Workspace, but also in general in the whole relationship you're building. In the first year, from the implementation part, we see that we can make the scope a bit smaller, and within 3 months, but we always try to aim for the fastest way, deliver value. And this is a thing like which really keeps the enthusiasm going if we deliver value faster from the first day of the implementation. We are ongoing with optimization, and because we are a front end, this also goes behind Workspace 365. So sometimes Workspace 365s make end users aware of other problems they are having, which are not really a thing for Workspace 365, but could help you as a partner to maybe also get on other projects for the company. And therefore, we see also really that we are driving on sustainable growth together with our customers. And because the implementation is a big part, we also have like 2 versions of the customer program. So we have the first 12 months where we help and guide you through delivering the first value within the implementation together. And afterwards, how we collectively can check in with the client and optimize their Workspace 365, but let's say whole digital workplace environment. And to make this a success, we have different roles and responsibilities. So a customer is the functional owner and also plays a huge part, because a Workspace 365 environment should be tailored. And to tailor it, we need the input from the customer itself. And nowadays, because we have like a lot of roles and rights we can specify in the Workspace 365, can also make sure that they are on a level admin of, for example, a space. But they are not directly like a whole Microsoft 365 admin and have all the roles and rights you don't want to give to like every customer. So for example, if you have a space especially implemented for HR, you can make someone of HR only for that space a admin. So they can make some changes within only the HR space, but they don't have the roles and rights to edit other kinds of things. So they also cannot like change other spaces and make things in a fold. Because I think it's really the most important thing that everyone knows who is responsible for which part. Therefore, also, if you look at more the backend side of things, we see the partner playing a huge role in that, or like looking at the roles and rights in Active Directory from Azure to make sure that like Nathan cannot see like personal information of me within the global search. I think all those parts are really important part of the partner. And Workspace 365 in leading this project, advising, but also taking ownership in the project management. And I think it's one of the best things that we can delegate all the responsibilities also on really, really small parts of the environment by the customer. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Lisanne, Hans, if you still have got any questions left, we also have some time left, so please ask. Could be about the webinar, but also could be anything.
I think it looks good, so thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Hans also messages. No questions. Thanks for the presentation and have a nice weekend. And you, Hans,
Yeah.
I think he's just jumped off, but yeah. And also to you, Lisanne, thank you for joining. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. And like Stan says as well, if you do have any questions after this, please do reach out and please do share this with colleagues at Time IT. Also happy to always have a chat.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.
That's one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.